Hi boys and girls, welcome back again to another literacy lesson with me. Today we're going to be looking at a new text. We're going to be seeing if we can read and understand a fiction text, and we're going to look today at a text called James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. To be successful in today's lesson, we're going to see if we can use phonics to read unfamiliar words, see if we can use other reading strategies to decode words. We're going to see if we can find some evidence from the text to support any answers we've got. And we're going to also see today if we can develop our inference skills to make predictions. So inference is where you take things that are from the text and use your brain to sort of come up with your own ideas about it. So we're going to read chapter 1 of this text, James and the Giant Peach. And while we're reading it, I'd like you to think about the following questions. What's happened in the story so far after we've read it? And what is your first impression of each of the characters?
1. Until he was 4 years old, James Henry Trotter had a happy life. He lived peacefully with his mother and father in a beautiful house beside the sea. There were plenty of other children for him to play with, and there was a sandy beach for him to run about on, and the ocean to paddle in. It was the perfect life for a small boy. Then, one day, James's mother and father went to London to do some shopping, and there a terrible thing happened. Both of them suddenly got eaten up, in full daylight, mind you, and on a crowded street by an enormous, angry rhinoceros which had escaped from the London Zoo. Now this, as you can well imagine, was a rather nasty experience for two such gentle parents. But in the long run, it was far nastier for James than it was for them. Their troubles were all over in a jiffy. They were dead and gone in 35 seconds flat. Poor James, on the other hand, was still very much alive, and all at once he found himself alone and frightened in a vast, unfriendly world. The lovely house by the seaside had to be sold immediately, and the little boy, carrying nothing but a small suitcase containing a pair of pyjamas and a toothbrush, was sent away to live with his two aunts. Their names were Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, and I'm sorry to say that they were both really horrible people. They were selfish and lazy and cruel, and right from the beginning they started beating poor James for almost no reason at all. They never called him by his real name, but always referred to him as "you disgusting little beast," or "you filthy nuisance," or "you miserable creature." And they certainly never gave him any toys to play with, or any picture books to look at. His room was as bare as a prison cell. They lived, Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and now James as well, in a queer ramshackle house on the top of a high hill in the south of England. The hill was so high that from almost anywhere in the garden James could look down and see for miles and miles across a marvellous landscape of woods and fields. And on a very clear day, if he looked in the right direction, he could see a tiny grey dot far away on the horizon, which was the house that he used to live in, with his beloved mother and father. And just beyond that, he could see the ocean itself, a long, thin streak of blackish blue, like a line of ink beneath the rim of the sky. But James was never allowed to go down off the top of that hill. Neither Aunt Sponge nor Aunt Spiker could ever be bothered to take him out himself, not even for a small walk or a picnic, and he certainly wasn't permitted to go alone. "The nasty little beast will only get up to mischief if he goes out into the garden," Aunt Spiker had said. And terrible punishments were promised him, such as being locked up in the cellar with the rats for a week if he even so much as dared to climb over the fence. The garden, which covered the whole top of the hill, was large and desolate, and the only tree in the entire place, apart from a clump of dirty old laurel bushes at the far end, was an ancient peach tree that never gave any peaches. There was no swing, no seesaw, no sandpit, and no other children were ever invited to come up to the hill to play with poor James. There wasn't so much as a cat or a dog around to keep him company, and as time went on, he became sadder and more lonely, and he used to spend hours every day standing at the bottom of the garden, gazing wistfully at the lovely but forbidden world of the woods, and fields and ocean that was spread out below him like a magic carpet.
Okay, so just recap by yourself. What has happened so far in the story? What happened to James? What happened to his parents? Where did James go as a result of this? And I want you to think about what your first impression of those characters is. So thinking about what you know about James so far and what you maybe know about the aunts, what do you think of them so far in the story? What's your first impression of them? Pause the video and have a think for me. So my first impression of James is that obviously he's had a really tough life so far, And obviously he's going to be sort of struggling to get by, but he seems quite positive, even though he's had lots of things happen to him which are not really positive things. And my first impression of Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker is I don't think they seem like very nice people. If I'm thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Twit from the last story, I would sort of compare the two. I think Mr. and Mrs. Twit are very similar in terms of their attitudes to Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, just from my first impression. So, on the screen I have got part of the text that I've just read to you. And then underneath here I've got some questions that I'd like us to think about. So let's look at the first question together. The first one says, how long did it take for the parents to be killed by the rhinoceros? So I'm going to be looking for probably the word rhino or rhinoceros in the text. I'm going to be looking for a time. So I might be looking for minutes, seconds, hours, days, months, something like that. And I might be looking for a number as well, because obviously it's going to be telling you about how long it's going to take. So when you found it, oh, I found it. I found the word seconds. That helped me. Here's the sentence. It says, they were dead and gone in 35 seconds flat. So my answer to this question would be 35 seconds. Let's look at the next question. What happened to James's house? I've just realised it says what happened to the James's house. That does make sense. Should have proofread that. So let's get rid of that. And what happened to James's house? So I'm probably looking for house or home. Oh, I found the word house. Have you found it? So the sentence says, the lovely house by the seaside had to be sold immediately. So what happened to the house? It was sold immediately. Okay. And what items were inside James's suitcase? So again, I'm looking for the sentence with probably the word suitcase in it, and I'm looking for what was inside that suitcase. See if you can find it. Oh, I found the word suitcase. Have you found it? Read the sentence. Okay, so the second part of the sentence says, and the little boy, carrying nothing but a small suitcase containing a pair of pyjamas and a toothbrush, was sent away to live with his two aunts. So what items were in the suitcase? It was a pair of pyjamas and a toothbrush. There's your answers. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go to DB Primary now. I'd like to see if you could download for me the text and the questions that I've set for you. And then when you finish that, come back here and we'll do our open together. So the objective today was to read and understand a fiction text. To be successful, we were supposed to use phonics to read unfamiliar words. Hopefully you did that and that won't be your next step. Is your next step to read other reading strategies? Sorry, to use other reading strategies to decode words? Is your next step to use evidence from the text to support answers that you've got? Or is your next step to use those inference skills to make predictions? If you haven't answered one of the questions to do with inference, then maybe that could be your next step. Okay? I hope you enjoyed today's lesson with this book, James and the Giant Peach. Now, unlike the Twits, we're not going to read the whole of this book, but we are going to read parts of the book. And if you enjoy it, then maybe it might encourage you to read James and the Giant Peach in your own time.